even though he's working with us, helped bring us people, and the people he brought us ended up being some of our best canvassers and supervisors. So I can only imagine how much better our office could have been if he was able to stay.
Uh, Thad, tell me briefly, just tell me how you ended up down here in Augusta in this campaign.
So my aunt lives in Stone Mountain, and my plan was, okay, since I'm gonna be in Georgia for a few weeks, I'm gonna contact anyone and anything I can to get on with the Stacey Abrams campaign. So a couple of days go by, and I think one of the former executive directors of the party, she has her own consulting company or like her own job listserv, and I saw it. And so I had commented in the contact us section that like, hey, I applied. Do you know anyone in the campaign? And then next thing I know, I received an email the next day about interviewing. So I interview, get trained, get onboarded. They decide to send me to Augusta. But before I get to Augusta, I have to make sure I have somewhere to stay. So I get in the Facebook group, Georgia Dem Politicos, and ask if anyone knew of anyone in the area that had a spare room or if folks had any connections down here. So a lot of people started tagging other people and started asking them. And then eventually I get inboxed by Joe offering his spot.
Joe Trainer?
And so after he gives me the okay to let me stay with him, as soon as I get to Augusta and starting to get things set up, crashed with him, and then he got me up to speed with the local political scene and also how things are going politically in Georgia. Now, the office is open. We're interviewing people, we're hiring people, we're training people, but most of the people that we're trying to interview and talk to and hire, they don't have political experience. So one day, I don't even remember how it came up, but I just asked Joe, like, hey, you want to help us out over at the office? And so he told me the days he was available, and then it went from there. And so before I got to Richmond County, I was informed about how the local political scene here was kind of crazy, whatever, but no one ever really elaborated. So at this point, I'm staying with Joe. He's part of the operation. One of my bosses comes down, recognizes Joe, and
physically came down and saw him.
Like he saw him and pointed out to me, like, man, what I was talking about the things going on in Richmond County. Yeah, why? Well, he's one of the people that's involved with those things. I'm like, oh, okay. And after he said that, that's when the light bulb went off in my head. Like, well, I get crazy things are happening, but he's letting me stay with him. He's been a team player, recruited for us, brought us additional people, and he's pretty good at the job. So I figured, well, if I tell him, my other boss, like the value Joe brings, then maybe it'll be seen in a better light. And then, like,
were you given any specifics about why they had issues with Joe?
Not
really,
not at all.
Okay.
And then, like, my main boss, he had came down and saw Joe and met Joe as well, and he said himself verbatim, like, I like Joe, I like that guy. And after he said that, I figured, well, let me tell you all the wonderful things Joe has been doing for us, and thinking, all is well.
He's on the Democrat team.
Right. So I'm thinking at that juncture, everything was going fine, only to find out later, I'm essentially told that apparently because of the county stuff, he cannot work in the campaign anymore, and I have to move out.
Wow.
Even though he's working with us, helped bring us people, and the people he brought us ended up being some of our best canvassers and supervisors. So I can only imagine how much better our office could have been if he was able to stay.
So Joe Trainer offered you free housing, supplied you with employees, gave you tips on the local party and how to organize and put you in touch with people.
Oh yes, he put me in touch with people. Actually, Miss Alberta, like, we was randomly downtown and we ran into her, and only to find out her space was where the volunteer coordinated piece was going to be ran out of, in addition to end up recruiting someone that she knew that night as well. So if it wasn't for Joe, there's a good amount of people that either would have not met, talked to, or they may have not ended up working for our organization.
And you got a phone call and said you cannot stay with Joe Traina. We have an Airbnb for you.
Or I was kind of like confused, like what? And they didn't have like any rhyme or reason or whatever. Like
I said, don't tell Joe.
like I get,
Oh, okay.
like I get that like it was at will employment. I get that wholeheartedly, but it didn't make any sense to me to just like arbitrarily let go of somebody who's been a really vital part in us getting this off the ground. Like there was no reason, no rationale other than the Richmond County stuff, and it was essentially like say like, well, that issue didn't know, we didn't know, but we think it's in the best interest of the campaign for you to move out and for him not to be a part of this. And I'm just kind of like, okay. And the irony is, when September comes, October comes, I'm perplexed as to how a county party had the juice to have him removed when this same county party virtually didn't do anything. I've even drove past their headquarters on certain weekends and it was just no type of activity. So in my mind, how can a county party get rid of someone who's working to help elect Democrats? Like, I'm perplexed greatly by this.
And that was my next question for you. How much help did the local Richmond County Party reach out to you? How much help did you get from them?
It's funny you say that. I don't believe anyone from Richmond County came to our office, but a few ladies from like Columbia County and maybe another county came to our office. I think it was Columbia County, but at first I assumed they were Richmond County until they gave me their cards, and I'm like, why are the Richmond County people, why are the Columbia County people here before the Richmond County people? Like, granted, I'm not from here, but I would think that I would see the Richmond County people before the Columbia County people.
Right.
But
So no volunteers were sent your way, no funds, assistance?
as far as
Were you invited to local party events?
oh, not at all. With
Anything
paid,
like that?
oh no, with paid canvassing, it's strictly business, straight corporate. You're just knocking doors, no fun stuff. That's all it is.
I see, okay.
Well, how did you get to Jim's place? Was that me?
Yes.
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 Oh, okay.
Yes, that's how you ended up with me because Joe gave me a call and said, hey,
Because your
look.
Airbnb was about to be up.
Yes, my Airbnb, I was there for a week. It had to be out around Labor Day. I was put up in the Airbnb, but there really wasn't too much conversation about where I would be staying post Airbnb. So once again, like I'm calling people, I'm texting people, and then me and Joe was talking, and then he was like, I know someone you might be able to stay with. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me inbox them. And then
Right.
So Joe called me and asked if, told me Thad's situation that he needed a place to stay. Could he come stay with me? So Thad came to stay with me. But I had to stay on the lowdown because this same party, the one that did not want Thad to stay with Joe, the same Richmond County party tried to impeach me just a few weeks later. So fortunately, that they did not succeed. So anyway, so that's Thad's story. Now, Joe, do you have anything to add? What do you think is going on here? Who is behind this? What's going on?
Well, I was told by Chris, just to, I guess, to get a little specific, all of this was organized after a shift. It was a Thursday night. I've been on the team for about a week, maybe a week and a half, and I was already, within a day, I was supervising the shifts, and it was a Thursday night. I remember I got a call like 30 minutes to 45 minutes after a shift by Chris, who was another, staffer in the office, and who had just ridden with me all over, our shift, and I think was grateful that, he didn't have to hold my hand along the way. But he calls and he's like, yeah, I don't really know what's going on, but, we don't need you to come back in the rest of this week. And I knew immediately what was going on. But, it wasn't until later I got a text and some other messages basically from him confirming that there was somebody in the party, and they just referred to it as a chair. So it could have been either, Matessa, or it could have been a district chair, it could have been Chris Johnson. Either way, and Chris Johnson had already been filmed saying that he was going to try and control who got paid on these shifts.
Yes, I know from meetings that I had been to by the local party that Chris Johnson stated at the meetings, we only want our people.
Well, and that goes into
Committee-friendly people is how he described it.
and that goes to Jordan Johnson too, who's the current chair, because they had a back and forth in the middle of a meeting, basically saying if you know Jordan and you're friendly with Jordan, you can get a job. But if they don't go through Jordan, then they can't get a job. And I remember, and when we saw that, recorded that, and reported that to the public, it was kind of like, this is ridiculous. Like, that's not how this works. There's not enough. Chris Johnson and Jordan Johnson don't know enough people, that are qualified or interested to staff these offices for the duration of the campaign. Jordan Johnson has never run an office like this, and neither has Chris Johnson. They have run, their own sort of party bureaucracy type stuff and events, but it was just kind of heinous that they would purposely target the professional. Like, I mean, the matter of the fact is, none of these people in the bureaucracy who have put so much value and weight on their titles in the party leadership have ever put together the professional resume that I have over the years. And it's not like, it's not even meant to gloat. It's just about like just common sense. Like, if you want something to run and you need something to run professionally, a certain way, with a level of experience and efficiency, it makes no sense to be purposefully targeting and removing people, and it's all petty. So you ask, like, what's going on here? Well, it's petty. They don't want progressives. They don't want me. They don't want folks that are challenging their authority or calling them to the mat, basically on their own malfeasance, to be in charge of anything or be able to contribute. And in this race, that's especially harmful because we know it was so close.
Get out my head. I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah, we know that, like, this was not the race to be playing these games.
Right. How many, at your highest point, how many employees did you have? How many canvassers did you have?
We
at
probably,
your peak?
at our peak, going into GOTV, upwards of to 100 people. And
100 employees.
Upwards, yes. And for these two individuals to be like, no one can get paid or work unless they know us, every canvasser, supervisor that came through our door, none of these people were ever called or contacted or approached by those two individuals.
Right.
Either they were generated from referrals from people we knew, like Joe or other people on payroll, or from Indeed or word of mouth. But all of the people on payroll never, ever, ever said anything about being referred by Richmond County Democrats.
Well, I worked with folks, I went out on shifts with folks that I was trying to encourage to get more involved in the Democratic Party. And they were, glad to hear it because they had never been outreached to by our own committee. And they lived in Richmond County. And they were young people and they were motivated by Stacey Abrams.
One more time.
So these young people who are taking this job, who are getting bought into the processing and are being motivated on a daily basis to talk to new voters in the community, doing grassroots field organizing. These folks are doing the work, and I'm on shifts with them trying to encourage them to get more involved in the actual bureaucracy, the actual party, because they're voters, they're citizens, and they're Democrats. And now, because they've worked for Thad and because they've worked for Abrams now, they have more experience than a lot of these folks sitting in there in these seats that have been sitting there for years. Mm-hmm. And so I'm encouraging them, and I'm sort of explaining to them how it is they can get more involved. I'm also pointing out for these young folks, essentially, they need to go ahead and just organize a new Young Dems chapter because ours has effectively dissolved in the time that Jordan Johnson was in charge. So, I'm not when I'm talking to them, I'm not making it about the current leadership. I'm not making it about here are the ways that you can get involved and carry on this work so that, you're out here doing this now. Here's how you stay involved. Here's how you grow a resume. I was trying to give people free game essentially and explain look, here's how I've done it. Here's how I've been a professional for years. I need more people like me out here with similar skill sets and experience so that we don't have to constantly be hiring from out of state. No offense, Dad. You know what I'm saying? It's good. We got to do what we got to do. And I'm ultimately obviously very glad that I got to meet that. But Thad knows too, if you can cultivate your own talent, where you're at, then that's an advantage for your campaign. And even if they don't, run the office, we need to have qualified folks. There was one of the supervisors who started basically as I was leaving, who's a PDR member, had had volunteer experience with Trent, and it made him more of an asset, for the Abrams campaign. Mm-hmm. All these folks, all these 100+ folks that have worked in the office here, it would be just an incredible waste of talent, energy, and investment if we let this drop and we don't pull them into the party. We don't make them members. We don't make them leadership. But they got rid of me because that's not what leadership wants to hear. We don't want to be threatened by young people that have more skills, more energy, more passion, and actual direction on how, to run these campaigns. And that's obviously counterintuitive, antithetical to our mission, right? We want to get Democrats elected. So much of the politics that we don't hear because it's not in the media, it's not on the 24-hour news networks, is local. It's the all politics is local really refers to the people at the local level who are pulling the strings to make sure that somebody gets this job, somebody gets this opportunity, somebody is tapped to run for this position or hold this sort of, maybe just some sort of decorative seat, right? Just some sort of bureaucratic seat. But all that feeds into the state level and the national level. That's where it starts. You don't get to the state committee, you don't get to the DNC without having to go through these gatekeepers, as a former state leader described to me. And I had to leave. And when I left, I took my talent and I took my skills and I took my passion and my wherewithal to Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I had a great time and ultimately got paid more. Ultimately had, higher rank or whatever. But I was willing to stay in Augusta, Georgia and get paid $15 an hour from probably no more than 30 hours a week for Abrams. I wanted to work for Abrams. I was willing to go out there and stay hungry for these votes. And the only reason I left was because of that. It's because somebody at the county level said, take him off. And rather than bucking that county authority, the campaign made the calculation to ask me. It's obviously I wasn't going to carry the election, right? But I know it's not just me. I know that this was not just done to me. I know that other people, even at higher levels of the campaign season, were asked to leave or were moved around not because of their qualifications, not because of their talent, not because of their ability to do the job, simply because somebody didn't want them there. And that is something that, unfortunately, our campaign culture here in Georgia exploited because we were already divided. We already had 5-6 different organizations doing the work, right? So in the middle of our own campaign season, we're having turnover between the Democratic Party of Georgia, the paid canvassing operation, the New Georgia Project, Georgia Shift, the county operations. All these other different operations are not talking to each other. Some because legally they can't, and some just because they're not built up to do that. I go to Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Within the first week that I'm there, I've already met the state chair. I've already met district chairs. I've already met I've already been to these field offices, and I know where to plug people into, and they're all talking to each other. There's all one website. There's all one
coordinating.
There's all one vote builder.
Instead of
when you have 6 different fields, you have 6 different vote builder accounts.
Right, because on my side, whatever we were doing, paid canvas and volunteer canvas, we did not interact or talk to each other at all. If it wasn't for me running to Miss Alberta with Joe, I would have never known where the volunteer coordinator office was.
Okay, I just have a couple minutes left. Final thoughts. What would be your suggestions? We barely lost this race. We barely lost it, okay? We have got to be ready in 2020. We can't afford to make dumb mistakes. Please tell us briefly what you would recommend.
In my opinion, I feel as if it'll take a more collaborative effort instead of individuals being so quick to want to take credit for a win or productivity. Unfortunately, in this campaign culture, too many people like to build themselves up as, I did this, I did that. No one individual person gets any candidate elected. It is a group, it is a team. And if that team is not communicating or interacting, is going to collapse on itself. And in my personal opinion, don't get me wrong, voter suppression is a very real thing, But if my operation and our twin colleagues, if we were on a better accord, I felt as if it could have had a better result or honed in on certain things. But at least the good thing is there's now 6 places. You have a bunch of people trained, ready to go, knock on doors. Now, whether or not they'll be willing to volunteer, that's its own conversation and argument. But if we don't take the time to build the infrastructure before an election, it's going to be history constantly repeating itself. And so just making sure people to keep in mind the long-term game instead of these individual petty things that get people removed, that's not important. Like, if anything, stuff like that is why we don't have enough people doing this work. Because Joe would have been like more than in his right to be like, fuck this, fuck Democrats, fuck this campaign, I'm taking my ball and going home. When really he did not have or do that. But you have a lot of these executive directors, county chairs, or people with position or influence that if it's not their way, they want to set the whole operation on fire. But I'm going to keep it at that because I can run my mouth about this.
Joe, just a few seconds left. Any final thoughts?
It's not gonna be a few seconds. I'll tell you that.
Well, my battery's gonna run out, but here, go ahead.
Let's see. So definitely echoing, what Thad just said there for sure. When we talk about efficiency, that's really what I'm about, right? So I need the thing needs to work, right? And yes, suppression is there, but it's the same suppression that was there in 16. It's the same suppression that was there in 14 and in 12. It's the same suppression that's going to be there in 20. The only way to beat suppression is to outperform, right? We're not doing that if we're splitting the pot 6 different ways. And what we need to, and to be very specific, what that means is if you have 6 different operations, that means you have 6 different sets of administrators that are all making 40,000 plus. If you have 1 operation, 2 operations, let's just split it down to 2. Let's go from 6 to 2. Then you have much more money in the pot for paid canvassers, or much more money in the pot for field organizers. And that's who you need to be making these calls, and that's who you need to be making, getting the door knocking and hosting the events and the watch parties and the things that make a campaign culture that are attractive for folks to buy into. We spent a lot of money on good PR, but good PR is not field. That's 2 separate things. Good field
for the people in the back.
Good PR is not field. 2 very different things. Good field can make good PR, but you have to invest in the field first. And because we lost by a field margin is what they call it, a really tight field margin. Could have been won in the field had we all been working together instead of being redundant. I got calls of people having been knocked 6 times in one day. There were neighborhoods where New Georgia Project hit and the paid canvassing hit and the coordinated hit, and there were phone calls being made by county organizations. And it's because they were all working with the same list and didn't know it and nobody was talking to each other. That's a waste of time, waste of money, waste of all that. This is definitely not about one person. It's definitely not about me. It's about the thing working, because I can get run out of the party 20 more times. If it means anybody learns anything, and fine. You know what I'm saying? I would rather not have to be run out of Georgia, to work. I would rather be, contributing here, obviously. But I think, when we are honest about what we did or did not do, including this provisional ballot chase, we get honest about how things were not efficient. We get honest about how we misled the public in a lot of ways. Then, I think we will have what it takes to turn Georgia blue. Yes, 20 is coming. We need to be prepping for it now. If we waste our time ignoring the lessons and not trying to learn from them and not trying to be honest from them, then we'll let it slip again. Because just like we needed general turnout this time and we didn't take it seriously, we're going to need to outdo general turnout in 20. Trump has sort of relayed the board here, and we have to react to that, not just look for every cop out and every reason why this didn't work or that didn't work, and instead of owning it. So I'll let you battery say it
Almost
there.
done.
All right.
My final thought is the election's over, but this is not the time to stop. Okay, we need to keep working and be active in the community. The party has got to be active in the community, engaging voters year round, not just at election season, okay? So let's hope we've learned that lessons. I want to thank Joe and Thad for all the work they've done. Thank you for watching. All right.